This is Dadasaheb Phalke, who directed the first Indian film Raja Harishchandra, screened at Bombay in 1913. And now, 100 years later, we have chosen to adopt his strategy of casting men to enact female roles, celebrating his pioneering film. It is said that Ramanujan enjoyed watching Tirukutta plays. And so, except for the role of his wife Janaki, actors from this folk tradition impersonate the other female characters in this docudrama.
Since M is even, M is wrong, hence the proof QED.
It was in the sixth form that the magical world of numbers opened up for Srinivas Ramanujan. Fractions, decimal values, cubic equations intrigued him. And so began his journey into an infinite unknown.
Were there any famous stories about Ramanujan as a young mathematician?
In fact, one of the stories where he was discovered was, the 0 by 0 story?
The zero? No.
His teacher was asking, he posed this problem to the classroom. If 3 bananas are distributed amongst 3 students, then each student would get 1 banana. Now, if 1,000 bananas are distributed amongst 1,000 students, each would still get 1. And then little fellow Ramanujan put his hand up and said,
Sir, so if no fruit is divided among no one, still everybody gets 1? What I'm saying is, if 0 is divided by 0, can the answer still be 1?
No, of course not. But there's nothing to laugh at. There are always exceptions to the rule.
Amazing.
That's fantastic. It's funny that you tell me this story because so much of Ramanujan's work depended on producing theorems from understanding the importance of introducing variables. So his notebooks are full of power series with multiple variables. It looks like magic, and then in the final line, he will say, let W be 1, and let Q go to 0, and then out comes a beautiful theorem. And maybe producing something from seemingly nothing.
Early glimmers of his genius were already visible here.
Ah, yes, I agree.
It is said Ramanujan was born after his maternal grandparents fervently prayed at the Namakkal temple for their daughter to bear a child.
For the orthodox Vaishnavites, religion is an everyday practice. Worshipping the Lord and adhering to Vedic customs was a way to attaining spiritual enlightenment. Ramanujan's family were Vaishnavite Hindus, deeply devoted to Sri Lakshmi Namagiri, consort of Narsimha, the man-lion incarnation of Mahavishnu. For the Iyengars, the goddess is a form of benevolent yet potent energy.
In a trance, possessed by the family deity, his grandmother blessed her daughter, proclaiming that the goddess would speak through her firstborn.
ஸ்ரீ ராமானுஜர் அவதார தினமான வியாழக்கிழமை என்று பிறந்திருக்கான் குழந்தை. அதனால ராமானுஜன்னு பெயர் வச்சிருங்கோ.
Ramanujan was born on a Thursday and, as suggested by an astrologer, was named in honor of Saint Ramanujacharya. Considered special, Ramanujan turned out to be a willful, self-driven child. Family records indicate that only after the Akshara Abhyas ceremony did he start speaking. He was already 3 years old.
Ramanujan grew up in Kumbakonam, situated on the banks of the river Kaveri. Famous since ancient times for the elaborate Mahamakam festival held here once every 12 years. A thriving community of Vedic Brahmins, patronized by a succession of benevolent rulers, had established a lively tradition of scholarly pursuits. The pilgrim town was also a busy trading center, much in demand for its fine saris. Ramanujan's father, Srinivas Iyengar, worked in a cloth merchant's shop and was highly respected for his keen eye in spotting good quality silks.
Komla Tamal, an ardent devotee, was adept at astrology and occult numerology. Her arithmetical predictions often came true. Well versed in singing the Nalayira Divya Prabandhams, the hymns of the Alvar saints, reverberated throughout little Ramanujam's childhood.
They take not only as pramana the Sanskrit texts, Vedic texts, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, the Brahma Sutras, but the Visishtadvaitins, the Vaishnavas, they take into consideration also the hymns of the Alvars, the Tamil hymns of the Alvars. So that is the Visishtadvaita. You can say it's qualified monism. Here, the idea is there, Advaita, it is a monistic philosophy in one sense, but the jivas are separate, the Supreme is separate. And the jivas themselves are, I can say, the projections of the Brahman. You see them separately, but they are the same.
The Brahmins of Thanjavur district had slid into a genteel poverty, having lost their royal patronage under the colonial rule. Ramanujan's family was no exception, and like many others, depended on the charity of the Sarangapani temple situated at the end of their lane. Early in his life, he understood the Brahminical dictum of simple living and high thinking. Austerity was the credo for attaining spiritual goals. The Iyengar family stoically bore the brunt of mounting costs of living with an abiding trust in destiny, their karma.
During Ramanujam's time, Thinnai village primary schools dotted the rural landscape of the Tamil-speaking areas. Collective recitations set to metrical verses developed a keen sense of recall in the children. Repeating letters of the alphabet with symbols drawn in sand made abstract connections easy to understand. This oral tradition might have developed little Ramanujam's flair for logical thinking and deep reflection.
If already as a child Ramanujan's mind was towards mathematics, the mathematical numbers, surely his Shiva Vaishnava background, especially the Divya Prabandha background, could have helped him. Why have these Alvars used these numbers? And that may have led him to take more interest in maths. It may have made his thoughts keener.
Older students might have helped Ramanujan grasp the subtle connect of spirituality and mathematics. His single-minded focus on higher studies often made him the target of silly pranks. And fellow students would have a hearty laugh at his expense. But he was above pettiness and joined their merriment with equal gusto. Informal in nature and fun to attend, these primary schools imparted a sense of mathematical practice and vernacular ability designed to serve the then prevailing agrarian and mercantile requirements.
You know, the Tamil culture is steeped in a culture of maths. Recreational maths, folk maths, things, different name by which we know, was so popular in the Tamil culture that it was around everywhere. Games like the wolf and sheep, where you have to think and strategically place numbers. Then lots of puzzles, where the answer is not important, but how are you going to solve is very important. Ramanujan's mother is considered to be famous for this maths puzzles. And she used to play it with Ramanujan when he was young. Maybe that had a formative influence. And the culture of maths that was prevalent around in the society played a role in providing a value to what he wanted to do. And Ramanujan grew up in this kind of a cultural milieu. Where maths was around him, maths was valued. Perhaps this gave him impulse for him to indulge himself in mathematics while he suffered hardship.
The early notebooks of Ramanujan, which he wrote in school, contains one of the magic squares which had already occurred in Ganita Kaumudi. It was written by Narayana Pandita in 1356. There is a tradition which you must have been quite aware of. His view of mathematics was certainly very different from the view of the Westerners.
In the ethos of Indian thought, no gulf exists between God and man, the creator and the created. All life forms are but mere reflections of the absolute. Unlike the Western perception of life, the Hindu worldview of karma spans several lifetimes. Artha, dharma, kama, moksha define the goal of human realization.
Unaffected by distractions, Ramanujan dwelled in mathematics far beyond his age. 2 college students stayed with the family as monthly boarders, helping raise the meager household income.
He used to scribble away at math on that porch. On a slate. He recorded his findings in his notebooks. That all happened here, right here, 90 years ago.
These youngsters would bring books from the library to whet Ramanujan's growing appetite for higher mathematics. Loney's trigonometry, Carr's synopsis, and such other. In fact, Carr's synopsis was only a collection of theorems without giving any proofs. It was merely a beginner's guide. But Ramanujan envisioned in it new vistas of possibilities. He tackled the formality of Western text with the traditional wisdom of vernacular logic. Unfortunately, the elder Iyengar didn't quite appreciate Ramanujan's intense involvement with mathematics.
So tell me, do you have a favorite Ramanujan work?
Yeah, of course. I love the entire body of mathematics which has come out of his paper on arithmetical functions.
Ah, that's one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
So tell me.
Well, there is the Ramanujan tau function and the Ramanujan delta function.
So the delta function is somehow the most important prototype for a big theory.
Exactly, the way you said it. It's a prototype of the entire theory of automorphic forms, leads on to this Langland's program, which is this, many consider it as a unifying principle in mathematics. And the first example you have to understand is the Ramanujan delta function.
That's right.
It's like this huge iceberg, and then there's this tip of this iceberg, and on top of this tip is Ramanujan. And this example, the delta function and the tau function, and you got to understand that.
And this one example has so many rich properties that people could build big theories.
Right. It's mind-boggling.
It is breathtaking.
The introduction of the Western educational system was a godsend opportunity for the Brahmin community. But the rigid college curriculum made no allowance for individual talent. Nothing other than mathematics held Ramanujam's interest. He especially abhorred physiology because of the live dissection studies involved. Its implicit aggression aroused his deepest anxieties. And by referring to the tantric power of the Kundalini serpent in the Yoga Sutra, he would routinely ridicule laboratory practice. For Ramanujan, knowledge of the transcendental and the mundane were both part of his scholastic rigor. Working all by himself, he succeeded in developing the summation series, irrational constant, and also Bernoulli's numbers. The higher reaches of mathematics were a challenge that spurred Ramanujan, unleashing his imagination and creative spirit to uncover the hidden truth beyond magical numbers. By intuitively deducing Western mathematical concepts of the highest order, he proved indigenous traditions to be equally valid. But, unknown to himself, he was only rediscovering many facets of the magic already credited to celebrated mathematicians of yore. This effort, going vain, was to haunt him in the years to come.
Ramanujan would regale his friends with quirky interpretations of the religious epics. Conversant with symbolic numbers, sutras, and astronomy, he fascinated fellow students with occult ideas. He would use his understanding of the intangibles to counter Western concepts of knowledge, which relied on physical evidence and experimentation.
What good is this science that forces one to kill in order to learn?
So Ramanujan was, I call him a great anticipator. We don't teach people to be mathematicians like this. He was able to anticipate and discover examples of ideas that would later go on to become theories 20, 30, even almost 100 years after his death. Oh, tell me about that.
Oh, this is Ramanujan's mother, Komalattama, and little Ramanujan plays this game. It's called Wolf and Sheep, something like that.
Swami, but that is the game. Whoever plays the sheep
always loses. அப்படியா? Amma, you're surrounded. Chuchu,
I have lost. The wolf is supposed to win. How did you do it?
I did it with my numbers.
Because all those original letters being showcased.
Oh.
This is Hardy's handwriting.
This is Hardy's letter to Ramanujan, 1913. Where does it start? It must start someplace.
B1. I saw a numbering, B1.
Or maybe it doesn't start, it just ends.
In fact, Hardy has stated that when he went and asked him for a proof of one of those entries, he would not give not one, but several proofs and different proofs. And some of them saying that, no, I will give you a simpler proof than what I had given before. And all that came to him spontaneously.
Wow. So already here this is fantastic. So he's already connecting certain continued fractions to numbers of the form e to the minus pi root n.
But what you should interpret here is the remarkable ability which he had of recalling something which he had recorded in his notebooks at will. If you ask me, I will attribute this to his mother. Because his mother was able to recall 1,000 of the 4,000 verses which are about the Lord Narayana. It's called Nalayana Divya Prabandha. She had that remarkable ability. I would say that he inherited it and he was able to recall anything at will.
Here comes 691. And so, presumably, if we're to turn the page, or a few pages later, he'll use this formula to prove the famous tau congruence mod 691.
Ramanujan's remarkable physical resemblance to his grandmother and mother was evident to all. This confirmed for many the family legend that he was indeed a special blessing of goddess Namagiri.
Ramanujan's psychological life was primarily an unfolding of his complex relationship with his mother. Komalata Mal practiced astrology and was proficient in numerology too. This is his mother. Early in his life, she established with Ramanujan a long-term collaboration in the magical manipulation of mathematical symbols, numbers and matrices for occult purposes. And throughout his life, Ramanujan strongly identified with her, associating femininity with the ability to magically handle the secret world of sacred numbers.
It was only in 1907 that a mathematical club was formed in the Madras Presidency. Most math aficionados had secure government jobs and indulged their passion only in their spare time. However, by the time young Ramanujan came to the city, the informal club had long been established as a registered society. His brilliance was duly recognized as he began interacting with other members of this elite group. And soon, his highly original research papers were published in their quarterly journals.
Ramanujan began to see his mathematics as a transcendental abstraction, as a means of isolating himself from the rest. It might also have served him as a defense mechanism against surging adolescent instincts. Numbers became his exclusive refuge from the world of collegiate education. Herein lies the significance of Ramanujan's life story. It provides a rare opportunity to understand the mindset of a mathematician steeped in ancient intellectual traditions.
Alvars, the Vaishnavite saint poets, speak of a vision. within each being resonates the entire universe. This non-dual mode of being is our true nature. The experience of this reality is a momentary glimpse, a flash of realization. Eventually, the sense of a separate self disappears. All opposites merge, all contradictions coalesce into a singular consciousness.
In India, traditional practice of mathematics reveals a mystical divine linking with consciousness. Vedic texts explain this connection by elaborating on the many layers of the unconscious, of cognition and perception.
हिरण्यवर्णा हरिणीं सुवर्णरजतस्रजां चन्द्रां हिरण्मयीं लक्ष्मीं जातवेदो मावा ताम् आवह जातवेदो लक्ष्मीं मनपगामिनी.
For Ramanujan, meditating on mathematics was a path to attaining that supreme knowledge.
For 3 years, he lived in total obscurity, filling up notebooks which he had maintained since the age of 14. They reveal an early curiosity and a highly original thought process, abundant with elegant formulae. These books are a treasure trove of mathematical truths. The final results were based mainly on inductive logic and a deep instinct that bordered uncannily on the mystical.
It was a period of intense activity, with hypergeometric series, partition of numbers, continued fractions, elliptic functions, consuming all his youthful energies. This creative pursuit of mathematics was briefly interrupted in 1909 by his marriage to little Janaki, a child barely 9 years old. New responsibilities forced him to look for a steady job. And after 3 years of struggle, he found one as a petty clerk at the Port Trust office in Madras.
நல்லது. இப்போ நம்ம நாமக்கல் கிளம்புறதுக்கு ஏற்பாடு செய்வோம். வா.
Ramanujan found his moorings in the realm of higher mathematics. It satisfied him intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. He dwelt in a metaphysical reality of his own, secure in the grace of a divine inspiration. But accepting the prestigious invitation from Professor Hardy meant risking the forbidden, crossing the seas to go abroad and losing his higher caste status.
I've read somewhere that Ramanujan used to have these dreams where he would see Namagiri, the goddess of Namagiri, and Narsimha, and then he would get up in the morning and he would write down just pages of mathematics. Sometimes I feel that was maybe a convenient way to explain some kind of inexplicable intuition.
Ah, yes.
Do you have any nice example illustrating this kind of divine intuition?
Oh, I do. I've been thinking about these partition numbers for years, and I still can't get over how Ramanujan became the first master of this subject. These are the partition numbers of Euler. In how many ways can you add up numbers to get 4? Turns out there's 5. And for 10, it turns out there's 42. And for 20, there's 627. And by the time you get to 50, there are over 200,000 of them. And Ramanujan was the first person to figure out the size of these numbers. It's incredible. The intuition he must have had was incredible. Yeah. And he was a master of figuring out the divisibility properties of these numbers.
He was not much taken aback or surprised or shocked or defensive when he dreamt that the great mother goddess Namagiri was writing on his tongue the identities, probably that goddess, and that dream was a part of his self as much as his conscious, more mathematical, more conventional sense.
நாமகிரி தாயார் உத்தரவு கொடுத்துட்டா. அம்மா கோடி கோடி நமஸ்காரம். இப்ப நான் நிச்சயமா கடல் தாண்டலாம்.
One more thing I should add here, that in recent times, this is not as obscure or obscurantist an experience as it might sound to you, because other kinds of works has come out in psychology and psychoanalysis, which suggest a very parallel process in many other creative persons, and shows that there can be something like a dream ego in individuals which maintain a parallel ledger of ourselves, and where a different kind of synchronicity, different kind of relationships prevail according to the logic of dreams.
Eminent mathematicians Professor J.E. Littlewood and G.H. Hardy discuss Ramanujan's initial letters.
Because no one would have the imagination to invent them. He must be a mathematician of the very highest order.
Prior to embarking on the ship to England, Ramanujan decides to send his family back to Kumbakonam. His unkempt hair bothers his mother, but she chooses not to argue. His sudden gesture of affection confuses young Janaki, but she seems secretly delighted. Finally, Ramanujan unties his top knot, ready to move on. For the very first time, Ramanujan gets his tuft his kurmi, symbol of high caste Brahmins, cropped to suit his passage into an unfamiliar culture.
It is here at the Trinity College that Hardy and Littlewood mentored Ramanujan, only to be taken aback by the depth of his innate knowledge. Soon, their interactions led to a seminal paper of great beauty and perception, entitled On Certain Arithmetical Functions. And then came the formalization of their celebrated circle method, which had its origins in his earlier results in India. The most remarkable aspect of Ramanujan's encounter with the West was that, for the first time and in his own right, he could pursue the professional career of a creative mathematician.
I'm just guessing, but I suspect that Ramanujan would sort of tell Hardy his remarkable calculations or formulae, and that Hardy, being a very professional and someone who knew the subject very well, would probably then go away and try and prove them, you see, and then when he couldn't do it, he'd go back to Ramanujan.
I think that if we include n minus 1 upon 24, we are sure to come to the final result.
Oh, very interesting. D upon dn, n minus 1 upon 24, he's right. But what's made him so certain? The function has so many forms. To have chosen the right one is nothing less than an extraordinary stroke of genius.
Here he was exposed to modern concepts of mathematics and apparently realized some of his own shortcomings too. But he had a great confidence in his own instinctual ability and kept surprising all those who came across his conjectures. Contemporary scholars say that Hardy never really understood Ramanujan's deep insights in pure mathematics, the crowning glory of which were the delta function and his conjecture about the tau function. Spiritualism was the core of Ramanujan's being, distinctly coloring his intellectual, creative, and emotional life. Practicing austerity in face of the colonial West, occasionally demanded he wear awkward professional attire. His attempts to balance his native knowledge with the need to participate in universal science put him on a new footing. His newfound persona reflected the social and cultural aspirations typical of Indian intellectuals of those times.
For the West, Ramanujan's origin in a distinctive culture and time, his religious faith and personal motivation had little bearing on the assessment of his work. Europe persisted on measuring Ramanujan by yardsticks that simply did not apply to him. What mattered to them was the formal content of his mathematics, the clues to which were sought in the outer intellectual structure of his work. The inner drama of his life was, at best, irrelevant.
You know, it's difficult to pinpoint, but I'd say he arrives at his results somewhat intuitively.
Intuitively? Good God, Littlewood, he's not some sort of Eastern oddity.
No, don't get me wrong. But let's say he's working on a problem. While at a conscious level, he's logically reasoning it out. If he also feels, from within, very strongly and very naturally, that a particular answer is correct, he looks no further. I call that intuition.
Oh, you're probably right. But you know, I'm not sure what to do. I've taught him all the things I think he should know, but I'm afraid that if I insist too much, I'll I'll destroy his confidence and break the spell of his imagination. And you know, it's funny, but I've begun to realize I'm learning far more from him than he is from me.
The First World War had engulfed Europe. Most young Britishers were at the front fighting the Germans. And on one of these gloomy days, a fellow student, P.C. Mahalanobis, visits Ramanujan at Wavell's court and finds himself intrigued by a problem appearing in a magazine he has just bought. Having figured out the puzzle through trial and error, he decides to try it out on his friend. As soon as the puzzle is read out, Ramanujan gives the correct solution. Mahalanobis is astounded. Amazing! How did you get it almost immediately?
It was obvious to me that the result would be a continued fraction. I then thought which one, and the answer came in a flash. As simple as that. You know, Mahalanobis, yesterday night I suddenly had a dream. Lord Narasimha appeared revealing his
Srinivas Ramanujan was one of the truly great formalists in the entire history of mathematics. The others, being Europeans, had the advantage of a rigorous academic discipline before acquiring their well-deserved reputations. Ramanujan, on the other hand, became a mathematician far before anyone could even think of exposing him to formal training. His contact with modern mathematical concepts was next to nothing. In his early years, he scarcely had any access to the large body of material published in the West. And so, his work cannot honestly be seen as a logical development of the formal mathematical knowledge of his time.
It's interesting to just dream of what Ramanujan would have done had he had access to today's computing power.
Yeah.
Because, of course, so much of what he discovered, he clearly discovered by just computing examples. And today that would be very easy, so maybe he would have uncovered far more.
Ave Regina Celorum, Ave Domina Angelorum, Salve radix, salve porta, ex qua mundo lux est horta. Gaude Virgo gloriosa, super omnes speciosa. Vale o valde decoro. Ave Regina Celorum, Ave Domina Angelorum, Salve radix, salve porta, ex qua mundo lux est horta. Gaude Virgo gloriosa, super omnes speciosa. Vale o valde decoro, et pro nobis Christum exora.
Here is something else from what I wrote. Herein lies the major significance of Ramanujan in the history of world science. His professional life gives us a rare opportunity to study the survival and dissolution of cultures, and beautifully illustrates the attempt to produce a valid modern science with a so-called antiquated cultural and psychological ability rooted in indigenous sciences. His success and failures tell us not merely about the structural growth of mathematics, but also make evident the cultural changes in science, the process through which science moves from one culture of creativity to another. In his mystical persona, he integrates the logical, rational, and the empirical factors with the speculative and normative principles of his mathematical traditions. And I believe that today we can assert this with much greater conviction that we could do at one time.
What's this?
Something I wrote last night.
You know, you drive yourself too hard.
From 0 to infinity, from the beginning to the end. Circle. You know, on that ship to England, my fellow passenger was a doctor of tuberculosis, Dr. Muttu.
Hush, Ramanujan, hush.
I'm going back now, home, with the same disease inside me.
You know you've been elected an FRS. You are a success. They want you here. You must fight your TB. You must.
Hardy, dear Hardy, you have been such a good friend to me.
In the summer of 1919, a few months after returning to India, doctors advised the ailing Ramanujan to travel inland to escape the stifling tropical heat and humidity of the coastal city.
Mukti petrol moyangu meyyanik mukti petrol.
In the Indian philosophical system, the spiritual unconscious is believed to spur the creative impulse to connect with the cosmic order. Here, no division exists between oneself and the universe. This ultimate realization is the attainment of moksha. Did Ramanujan achieve that state of true absorption?
Ramanujan lapsed into a coma and passed away soon after. He was young, only 32 years old.
In his later years, Ramanujan's favorite deity was Lord Narasimha, the aggressive, instantaneous incarnation of Mahavishnu, the supreme protector in the Hindu pantheon. According to sacred mythology, Mahavishnu was once compelled to emerge from a pillar as man-lion Narasimha to protect his earnest child devotee Prahalada from the homicidal rage of his demon father Hiranyakashipu. Mahavishnu slew the father at twilight, tearing him asunder on the threshold, thus surmounting the duality of time and space. And in this leonine godhead, Ramanujan found his ultimate succor. The fountainhead of mathematical creativity and the annihilation of all his insecurities.
In Vaishnavism, the omnipresent being is revered as the principal male entity. All devotees then are feminine in their devotional spirit. It is possible that Ramanujan might have had a transformational experience of mirroring the goddess herself and sought refuge in her consort Lord Narsimha. One of the many forms of Mahavishnu, the Narsimha avatar, is essentially an abstraction, a symbol, an obligatory construct before any mathematics becomes possible.
Dear Hardy, I'm extremely sorry for not writing you a single letter up to now. I've discovered very interesting functions recently which I call Mach theta functions. These are the words that Ramanujan wrote in his last letter, just 3 months before he died. I'm sending you with this letter some examples. Unfortunately, the definition that he offers for a Mach theta function was really enigmatic at best. It was very puzzling. But like so much of Ramanujan's writings, it was clear that he was anticipating a great theory. That realization, combined with the dozens of papers that people had written on the Mach theta functions over the last 80 years, led to a real explosion of mathematics. What's surprising to us is that in the course of proving this theorem, we were required to understand the relationship between many different objects that Ramanujan inspired over the decades.
Perhaps one can never stop speculating over Ramanujan's intuitive power of foreseeing new horizons of possibilities. And it is only now, more than a century later, that we have begun to understand how all his ideas coalesce into a harmonious whole to play a pure raga of ultimate truth. How is it that one man anticipates an entire ensemble of thoughts, so unified and yet so diverse?